Welcome to Pario Magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by a professional wrestler and the current Soul of PWA champion. Welcome to Pario Magazine, Cherry Stevens.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So we're here today to chat about your journey in the world of professional wrestling. Before we dive into all of that, though, can you give our audience a brief little introduction as to who Cherry is away from the wrestling ring?
Oh, away from the wrestling ring. Yeah, I mean, Cherry's just really through and through lifelong learner. I like to study. I studied Japanese. I studied that in school and at college, and I continue to attempt to study Japanese. And actually really a bookworm. I love going to the library, picking out books and just chew through those. And yeah, I like doing sports too. I do a bit of CrossFit to keep myself fit for wrestling, on top of the wrestling training, which is quite a lot. And I do a little bit of Kung Fu on the side as well. So pretty busy.
Yeah, busy.
Yeah.
I guess the Japanese, learning that language has come in helpful with the crossovers between PWA and New Japan recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I started wrestling, I didn't realize how big wrestling was in Japan. And I guess we'll get into that about how I got into wrestling and didn't really know anything about it. But once I found that out and learned about New Japan and just how amazing all those wrestlers are, and actually getting to meet some of those wrestlers and use a little bit of my terrible Japanese, yeah, it definitely has come in handy.
Very nice. So like you mentioned, discovering wrestling, how did you first discover professional wrestling?
So I had, and I still have a housemate who was very into wrestling ever since he was a kid. And when we moved in together, he would watch a lot of WWE, and I never really wanted to watch it with him. I wasn't super interested in it. And when it was on, I was like, oh, just turn this off. And he started being the videographer for PWA in 2017, I want to say. It's Nick Ray. And he wanted to do a tryout because as a wrestling fan, you know, you always want to see, maybe I could be a wrestler myself. And so he wanted me to come along with him. And I thought that that was really an interesting idea just to try it. I didn't really think about actually like taking it up and doing it. But once I did that tryout, I actually really enjoyed it. And I found that I was like not bad at it. So I didn't have anything else that I was really committing a lot of my time to. I did feel a little bit lost at that time, I think. So it was the right time for me to get into wrestling in my life. And I just stuck with it for the last 4 years. So it'll be my 4-year wrestling anniversary coming up, just starting to train at least in like a couple of days or like the end of November. So yeah, it's just flown by.
That's sounds like a very unique entryway into wrestling, like not being a fan, but I'm going to do a tryout anyway and see what happens.
Yeah, I tend to do that a little bit, like with the Japanese too. A lot of people will want to learn Japanese because they want to understand anime, right? Or read manga or something. I didn't watch anime until I was learning Japanese for like 5 years because I just fell in love with the language once I started learning it in school. So I think I do a lot of things a bit backwards or unorthodox. So wrestling was no different for me.
Do you think perhaps that might have been a benefit though, because you weren't coming in with any preconceived ideas or I guess things that you've watched and picked up some sort of bad habits from?
Yeah, I think that it is a benefit in a way for sure, because I think about things from a non-wrestling perspective. I am getting to be more um, thinking about things as people would when they have been watching them from kids, because they've got those stories and they've got those beats that they're used to seeing in those classic wrestling matches. I didn't have any of that context. And so when I came with ideas, they were usually a bit out there, and sometimes they would be good, and sometimes they were like, well, no, this actually doesn't fit because of wrestling is XYZ. And so that's how I've kind of been learning it along the way.
And then once you did sort of get into beginning training and things, who were some of your idols and inspirations?
That's always a hard question to answer, just because, like I said, I didn't have anyone that I was like, that's my favorite wrestler. I just watched a ton of wrestling. And I guess if I had to pick, like the first person that comes to mind, and it was the first documentary, I guess, that I watched, which was the 24/7s that WWE, I think that's what it's called, do on like individual wrestlers, because that was my study. I was like, I got to go back and actually like learn about these famous wrestlers. And I guess Kurt Angle was one of the first ones. I think he's like an incredible wrestler, but also an amazing character, and funny and serious. And I wanted to kind of embody all those different aspects that I could pull out whenever I needed to. So I really liked him. And then as I continued to watch more wrestling and found out about wrestling in Japan, then I started to watch a lot more Stardom. And so a lot of the girls in Stardom, I really aspire to be like.
Okay. I imagine a lot of your coaches would have been big inspirations as well, given that you
Oh, of
didn't have
course. Yeah,
a wrestling
definitely.
background.
Yeah, for sure. All of the head coaches and the senior kind of wrestlers, completely, yeah, as well.
And you mentioned having a bit of an athletic background before beginning training. Was that beneficial, or do you think just having no idea about wrestling was a bigger benefit?
I think that they go kind of hand in hand with me. I think having the athletic background, having the coordination, like I'd done a bit of gymnastics before. Also things that get incorporated, like if I think about how I really enjoyed drama at school, there's such a big dramatic part of wrestling. And so I was able to kind of draw on that part of myself. Um, so yeah, I think it all benefits me in the end. And if there's something that maybe I'm not quite sure about, I'm always learning and improving in some way. So it's always good.
Okay. And you mentioned sort of coming into approaching your fourth year of training. Looking back, you came in through the PWA Green Dingoes program.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Well, that was I think I know that I was the first set of Green Dingoes that came through. Robbie came back from New Japan and he said, I want to have something like a Young Lions, how they have, so we can get more trainees onto shows. You might not be ready yet with a character, but at least we can start getting the in-ring experience. And I thought that was a really cool idea. And so it was me, David Streamer, and Nathan Pigeon were the first ones that came out on the Academy show. And I had my match with Jess Troy, which was a really awesome first match to have. And I think it's great. I mean, I wasn't actually a Green Dingo for too long. I only had 2 matches. And then I kind of stumbled across this character that allowed me to develop that. But I think it's a great idea. And I'm really proud and love watching the new Green Dingoes come through. So yeah, I think it's definitely beneficial for our trainees as they need that in-ring experience.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea when they
Yeah,
brought that concept in rather than you guys sitting in the training facility, just
just
doing
wait.
back
Yeah,
training, waiting to be ready to get on a show when there's so many talents fighting for those positions.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's all about the opportunities. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, you had your first match against Jessica Troy, but then the next 3 or 4 matches were against Madison Eagles and Shazza McKenzie. So 3 out of your first 4 matches were against probably the top women in PWA. How was that experience?
Invaluable. I mean, I love Jess. She's exactly like her wrestling style, I think, is very similar to mine, or maybe I guess it's the other way around because she was doing it first. Maybe I've based my wrestling style off of Jess a little bit just because I think she's amazing. So getting to be in the ring with those more experienced, like all the way up to Madison Eagles, and then Shaz, who's been doing it for like 15 years now, and then Jess, who's even still been doing it for like 7 or 8 years. Having them guide me through that in my early stages was, yeah, it was definitely, I was very lucky, I would say, that they are at PWA and that I was able to wrestle them for those first few bouts.
Would you say it was intimidating having them as your first few matches, or was it actually sort of comforting knowing that these guys can't know what they're doing?
It was definitely comforting for sure. I knew that I was in safe hands. And yeah, I guess maybe Madison was a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
I think everyone's intimidated by her. But yeah, it was definitely more comforting than it was scary. The scariest thing was having to perform in front of the crowd and make sure you don't mess anything up. So having them there was good. Yeah.
And like we mentioned with the Green Dingoes program, you didn't necessarily have the Cherry Stevens character as we know it now. How did that character come, and how did you transition to being the character we see today?
Well, to be honest, I am just a little bit awkward in real life. And so I kind of wanted to keep that in my character. And I thought, well, you're still starting out. What I kind of thought was, and this is just me, I never understand people who are like brand new and they're like, I'm the shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the best. I'm like, you just started, like, you're still learning. Like, come on, take it slow. And so I thought, well, why don't I kind of do that in my character and really build it around that and around my notebook and around me continuing to learn and grow. And I think that by doing that, it allowed the audience, as they watched me come through Green Dingoes and develop this Cherry Stevens character, to like grow with me. And so maybe that's why, you know, people really enjoy my wrestling now, because they've seen me go through that. And that's really how it came about. And like I said, in real life, I'm like a bit of a bookworm and stuff. So I wanted to have that true part of me in my character. But I still I get now that now that I'm champion, maybe I can't be that so much, even though I do really enjoy it and it's fun, and I have to be a bit more serious. And I think that I'm getting there with that, and I'm enjoying that part of it as well. And I'm just enjoying all the different character arcs that this is going to go on.
Have you taken some inspiration from sort of anime as well? Like I kind of see the anime schoolgirl type character coming into the Cherry Stevens character as well.
Yeah. So I definitely drew inspiration from Japanese schoolgirl, a little bit of anime. Just that's it's just been such a big part of my life. Like Japan, I've traveled there a few times. I've always wanted to live there. I just haven't had the opportunity yet. And now I don't want to go because I want to stay here at PWA. I would love for the Stardom girls to come over if they could, or if I ever had the opportunity to train there, of course I would. But that's kind of my personal style as well. So I've brought that into the character.
Okay. And you mentioned sort of climbing through the ranks and growing as a character, which we've all been along for the ride with as fans. Did you sort of expect to get the reaction you got recently at the Metro when you finally sort of achieved something great?
No, I never ever expect a reaction. And in that way, you are never disappointed if you don't get the reaction that you're expecting. So I never go into it with any of that. I think it's more just the happiness if I do hear that and they react, and I kind of am like, oh yeah, like let's go. So yeah, that's the way I approach it anyway.
Do you remember how you felt when you got that massive reaction in the Metro?
Uh like I said, just really happy. Yeah, just having that many people behind you and screaming you and kind of chanting your name is a really good feeling. There's nothing else I can really say about it.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the loudest reactions I've heard for quite a long time. I was like, oh
Oh,
wow.
big boy, and he went down, so yeah, makes sense. But yeah.
And like we've mentioned, you most recently captured the Soul of PWA Championship from Mick Moretti.
Yeah.
How did you feel in that moment?
Like all of the hard work was really worth it. It's always worth it when I step into the ring and I get to have a match, and I get to have that opportunity on that stage and for the audience. But that was for me, that moment, and for my hard work that I've put in that people don't see. So I think it was just really a moment of pride in myself.
since then, you've defended the title against Jimmy Townsend at the Roundhouse. And we've also heard Robbie Eagles sort of seem to set his sights on you and the title recently as well.
Ooh, okay.
Where do you see yourself going in the near future? We just saw you put up an open challenge as well.
Yeah, so that literally came out, what, like an hour ago? Yes, I spoke to our booker and I said that I want to be a fighting champion, and there's no point doing all this training if I'm not going to get in the ring and fight for this belt. And everyone should have the opportunity to challenge for this belt. And so that's what I'm going to do, at least in, for the next little while.
And then in the long term, what is the ultimate goal with wrestling? You mentioned stardom. Is that like the dream place you would like to go?
The long-term goal with wrestling, and again, this comes back to the fact that I was never a wrestling fan as a kid. And so unlike a lot of the other wrestlers that have been training who are have had their dream of getting signed, like, Robbie's been lucky enough to do that. Maddie Wahlberg, Grace Moller was lucky enough to do that too. And they've had that dream since they were kids. I never had that. And so to me, like, literally just being able to wrestle on PWA shows, and I hold PWA in the highest regard on the indie circuit. I think we're one of the best in the world, close to the best. And so that is an achievement for me, to be able to represent our brand and hold the belt for us. But if there was like a goal that I had in my mind, it would be at least to have one wrestling match in Stardom in Japan. That would probably be my goal. If they came over here to wrestle, that would be cool too, but I would love to go to Japan. And I did put another little semi goal in for next year, just because I feel like I really should go hard next year with the momentum, is that I want to go back to America to the WrestleMania week and try and see if I can wrestle on some shows over there, just so I can say that I did and get a bit of the experience. I think that would be really cool. So if I'm able to achieve those two things in the next couple of years, I would be really, really happy.
Okay. Yeah, I guess like coming in with no wrestling background, you're kind of just living your dream every show at the
Just happy to
moment.
be here.
Fair enough. Okay, so finally, where is the best place for people to support you and track your creative journey moving forward?
Yes. So my socials on Twitter, I am at booksarettight, which I really should change to my actual name because that's not a very easy search for people. And on Instagram, it's a bit easier. It's at cherrystevens_PW for pro wrestler. And I have merch on Wrestler Merch as well, so you can support me by that. And of course, you can also support me by coming and watching our shows at PWA.
All right, perfect. We'll put all those links at the end. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me, and good luck defending this title all over Australia and potentially all over the world.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks so much.